The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Smoke choked the air, and the distant roar of artillery made the ground tremble under the boots of soldiers. Wounded men and women groaned in pain, bleeding in makeshift stretchers under the harsh neon lights of a field hospital. Everyone assumed the medic was harmless, a quiet face among the chaos, but no one knew her true story. Her name was Captain Sarah Lawson, a decorated combat medic whose calm composure hid a lethal skill set no one expected. The first time the enemy saw her in action, they thought she was just a healer. The last time, 45 of them were counted dead, all inside the hospital they had assumed was safe. Arrival at the field hospital, it was dawn when the convoy arrived at the forward operating base. Sarah moved among the wounded, checking vitals, administering medication, and offering quiet words to the scared and the dying. Her uniform was simple, standard medic garb, white coat smudged with blood. She carried no obvious weapons. Even the soldiers around her underestimated her. One young lieutenant leaned over a stretcher, whispering to his buddy, "She's just a medic. What could she possibly do if the enemy attacks?" Sarah overheard, but she didn't respond. She never needed to. Her eyes scanned the perimeter with a sharp, calculating gaze. Every shadow, every movement, every sound was noted. She was already preparing for what most people never even imagined, a direct attack on the hospital. Flashback, why she's not just a medic years earlier. Sarah had joined the army as a combat medic. She quickly distinguished herself not only in healing but in survival, marksmanship, and hand-to-hand combat. During her first deployment, her convoy was ambushed, outnumbered, pinned down, and facing certain death. Sarah didn't just treat the wounded, she took command. She organized defensive positions, returned fire, and evacuated the injured under relentless enemy fire. By the end of that battle, every soldier survived. Her superiors called it unthinkable heroism, but she called it duty. Her skills were honed in blood and fire, a lethal combination hidden behind a healer's face. Tension builds, enemy forces close in back in the present. The hospital's perimeter was quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, distant gunfire echoed. Explosions shattered the calm. The enemy was approaching. Soldiers scrambled, dragging stretchers, trying to set up defenses. Panic spread. Sarah, calm as ever, secured her medical station and quietly picked up her sidearm, a standard tissue pistol she had trained with every day for years. No one noticed how her fingers hovered over the grip, ready. No one realized the storm about to break inside the hospital was already under her control. First contact, the intruders enter enemy fighters slipped through the perimeter, expecting chaos and easy targets. They didn't expect strategy, they didn't expect lethal precision. Sarah moved through the hospital silently. One by one, she intercepted the first intruders, pistol shots muffled, knives where stealth was needed, takedowns executed faster than the eye could follow. The soldiers who had doubted her glanced up in astonishment as she appeared behind a hallway corner, disarming and neutralizing 3 attackers before they even realized she was there. One whispered, "She's the ghost." The calm before the storm. Sarah paused at the central triage room, listening. She counted 45 enemy fighters moving through the hospital. She didn't panic, she didn't hesitate. She began moving methodically, leading them into traps, using barricades, and improvising weapons from hospital equipment. The enemy thought they had the advantage, but the building itself had become a weapon in her hands. This is where they learn not all medics are helpless, she muttered quietly. The soldiers nearby began to follow her lead, inspired by her calm authority. Scene ending, cliffhanger. The first wave of enemies was down. Bodies lay in the hallways motionless. Sarah's breathing was steady. Her eyes gleamed with determination. The remaining fighters were still coming. She glanced at the young lieutenant who had doubted her earlier. "Thought I was just a medic," she said with a calm, cold smirk. "Let's see how many of you make it out alive." And with that, the hospital descended into the chaos of the next wave, bullets flying, bodies moving, the storm fully unleashed. The battlefield wasn't outside anymore, it was inside. The field hospital, once a sanctuary of healing, had transformed into a deadly maze. Smoke swirled through the corridors, broken stretchers and shattered medical supplies littered the floor. The wounded groaned, but there was no time for fear. Survival depended on quick thinking and sharper reflexes. Sarah Lawson moved like a shadow. Every step was calculated, every shot precise. The first wave of intruders had been neutralized, but she knew more were coming. 45 trained enemy fighters had entered the hospital, a number that would intimidate even the bravest soldier. But not her. Her sidearm was empty. She switched to her combat knife, slicing silently through a doorway as 2 more enemies tried to flank her. Thunk, thunk, 2 bodies dropped, not a single civilian or soldier harmed. She ducked into the supply room, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and rolled it down the corridor. Enemy fighters were knocked off their feet, disoriented. This was urban guerrilla warfare in miniature, every object a weapon, every hallway a battlefield. Soldiers start to follow her lead. The young lieutenant, who had doubted her earlier, now scrambled beside her. He was terrified, but he could see her methods, each movement a calculated strike. "Ma'am, how are you doing this?" he shouted over the chaos. Without looking back, she responded calmly, "Focus, every move counts, don't hesitate. They expect fear, give them control instead." The soldiers began to trust her instinctively. Medics and unarmed personnel were being repositioned to safety. Sarah wasn't just fighting, she was leading. Her reputation as a medic hid her true abilities. They were witnessing a warrior in human form. Close quarters combat escalates. A group of enemy fighters tried to rush the operating theater, assuming it would be an easy kill zone. Sarah planted herself in the doorway. Her eyes scanned the incoming enemies, calculating trajectories, distances, and weak points. Bang! 2 enemies went down silently with headshots. Another lunged at her. She sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and slammed him into a wall. The metallic clang echoed through the room. She pivoted, knocked a gun from another attacker's hands, and spun behind a barricade made of overturned gurneys. The battlefield was now a chessboard, and Sarah was 3 moves ahead. Enemy reinforcements realized their mistake from the windows. More intruders arrived, thinking the hospital was lightly defended. They didn't anticipate the tactical traps Sarah had already set, tripwires made from medical tubing. Flammable chemicals from the lab improvised as smoke grenades. Locked doors rerouted the attackers into kill zones. The enemies panicked as they realized this wasn't a simple raid. This was a trap orchestrated by a medic who could dismantle them one by one. "Every hallway, every door, their mistakes are my advantage," Sarah whispered under her breath. The turning point by now, the SEAL support team had arrived outside, trying to breach the hospital. Sarah had already neutralized almost half of the enemy fighters inside. She moved into the central triage area, where the remaining intruders had barricaded themselves with hostages. "Release them," she commanded in a steady, cold voice, "or this ends badly for you." A single fighter sneered and raised his weapon. Sarah didn't hesitate. She fired 2 precise shots, disarming him instantly. Then, with a swift sweep, she disarmed and incapacitated the remaining enemies. Within moments, every enemy inside the hospital had been neutralized. The soldiers around her couldn't believe what they saw. "She just took down 45 men alone," whispered the lieutenant, "all while saving our wounded." Aftermath of the assault. Sarah rounded up the enemy survivors, tying them securely for extraction. She checked the wounded, administered aid, and organized evacuation. The hospital was battered, broken but intact, everyone alive. She finally allowed herself a brief pause. Sweat and blood streaked her face. "Never underestimate a medic," she said quietly. "We don't just save lives, we protect them too." The soldiers who had doubted her now looked at her with awe. She wasn't just a healer, she was a one-woman army. Scene ending, cliffhanger outside. The enemy commander, a shadowy figure who had orchestrated the attack, watched the aftermath through binoculars. "She's dangerous, too dangerous," he muttered. He turned to his team. "Prepare the next strike. This isn't over." Sarah, unaware of the looming threat, gathered her team. Her calm, deadly precision had saved the day, but the war was far from finished outside the field hospital. Enemy forces regrouped. Word of their defeat inside the hospital spread quickly. 45 men had been neutralized by a single medic. Their morale shattered. The enemy commander swore vengeance. "She's not just a medic," he snarled. "She's a weapon. Prepare the next strike, destroy everything." The next wave of attackers was larger, better armed, and fueled by rage. Inside the hospital, Sarah Lawson was already preparing. She didn't wait for the enemy to come to her. She moved like a predator, setting defensive positions with surgical precision. Every hallway, every room, every doorway became a trap. Improvised defense and tactical genius with a team of exhausted soldiers and medics at her side, Sarah barricaded the main entrances. She used overturned gurneys, medical carts, and even lab equipment to create choke points. She whispered instructions calmly but firmly. "Form pairs, cover each doorway, watch each other's six, use the hallways to funnel them." Her voice was steady, but inside, her mind raced through every tactical scenario. She knew the enemy would try to breach from multiple angles. Every second counted. As the first attackers breached the perimeter, she signaled her team to hold fire, letting the enemy walk into her traps. Thunk! Tripwire detonated a smoke grenade. The intruders panicked. They had underestimated the hospital and the medic who had become a one-woman army. Close quarters combat. The enemy poured into the corridors. Sarah moved among them like water, fluid, unstoppable. She neutralized fighters with precise strikes, disarming one with her sidearm, knocking another unconscious with a swing of a metal tray, and using the environment to her advantage. Bullets ricocheted off walls, glass shattered, the wounded screamed, but she moved calmly, shielding those who couldn't move. One soldier in awe whispered, "She's like a ghost, a deadly ghost." Every room she cleared revealed more chaos, but she remained composed, a beacon of control in the storm of violence. Tactical mastery and improvisation. Sarah knew she couldn't fight the enemy one forever. She improvised. Electrical wires created temporary short circuits to disable lights. Chemicals from the lab were used as smoke screens. Improvised barricades funneled attackers into confined spaces. Every tactic delayed the enemy, giving her team time to regroup and protect the wounded. She moved like a conductor orchestrating a symphony of destruction, precise, deadly, and methodical. The turning point, the enemy commander finally entered the hospital personally, a brutal, ruthless fighter. He expected resistance from ordinary soldiers. He didn't expect Sarah Lawson. They clashed in a corridor. He lunged with a knife. She blocked, countered, and disarmed him in one fluid motion. "You're out of control," he spat. "This is just a medic. You can't beat us all." She smiled coldly. "I'm not just a medic. I'm every life you've threatened and every soldier you've underestimated." With that, she incapacitated him, forcing him to retreat with his remaining forces. Soldiers recognized her power. Her team followed, watching her in awe. The young lieutenant who had doubted her earlier now looked at her with absolute respect. "She saved all of us, and she's still holding this place together." Sarah nodded silently. She had no time for praise. The hospital was still under threat, but she had proven one thing. Courage, skill, and calm under pressure could make a single person a force of nature. Scene ending, foreshadowing the final showdown outside, helicopters and reinforcement vehicles arrived. The enemy was regrouping, preparing for one last attempt to breach the hospital. Sarah looked at her team, the exhausted, bleeding, terrified soldiers. "Tomorrow, they'll try again," she said, "and tomorrow we'll be ready. This ends on our terms." Her gaze hardened. The enemy had learned their mistake too late. She was more than a medic, she was a warrior. The sun had barely risen, painting the horizon with streaks of blood, red and orange. Outside, the enemy commander had regrouped. This final wave was bigger, smarter, and fueled by vengeance. They intended to storm the hospital and finish what they started. Inside, Sarah Lawson moved methodically through the corridors. Her team was tired, bruised, and shaken, but they followed her lead without hesitation. Positions, she ordered quietly. They'll come through every entrance. Don't fire until I give the signal. Her calm composure belied the storm raging outside. She had survived worse. This was a matter of protecting the wounded and her team, and she intended to win. Suddenly, explosives rocked the main entrance. Smoke, dust, and debris filled the hospital lobby. The enemy poured in, weapons raised, confident in their numbers. But Sarah was ready. She moved with lethal grace. One enemy in the hallway fell with a silent takedown, another incapacitated by a quick pistol shot. Every move she made was calculated, drawing the intruders into kill zones she had set up hours before. The hospital echoed with the chaos of battle. Yet Sarah remained the eye of the storm. She moved from room to room, clearing corridors, protecting the wounded, and directing her team with precision. Heroic improvisation when the enemy tried to use medical carts and equipment to barricade themselves and gain an advantage, Sarah turned it to her favor. Oxygen tanks became smoke grenades. Roman IV poles and stretchers were used as tripwires and barricades. Chemical disinfectants created clouds of blinding mist. She transformed the hospital itself into a battlefield weapon. Every advantage is ours, she whispered. We fight smart, we fight together, and we win. Her team watched in awe. Soldiers who had doubted her skill were now inspired by her brilliance and courage. Confrontation with the enemy commander finally. The enemy commander himself appeared at the main triage room. His eyes burned with fury. A UNEW think you can stop me, you're just a medic, shouted. Sarah becomes scopt conferor and forward, her eyes unwavering. I'm more than a medic, she said coldly. I'm the reason your men never make it past me alive. He lunged with a combat knife. She sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and threw him into a stack of overturned gurneys. The fight was brutal but short. Her training, speed, and intelligence far surpassed his arrogance. With a final, precise maneuver, she incapacitated him, leaving him unconscious. The remaining enemy fighters, seeing their leader down, panicked. Securing the hospital with the enemy commander neutralized, Sarah coordinated the evacuation. The wounded were moved to safe zones, and the few remaining intruders were captured. Her team gathered around, exhausted, injured, but alive. She didn't just save us, one soldier whispered. She saved every life in this hospital. Sarah allowed herself a moment to breathe. Blood and sweat streaked her face. Bruises and scrapes marked her skin, yet her eyes reflected only determination and calm, the face of a true warrior. Scene ending, legendary status outside. Reinforcements arrived to secure the area. Helicopters hovered, and the field hospital stood battered but intact. The enemy would retreat, forever remembering the medic who had defied every expectation. Sarah looked at her team, then at the sunrise cutting across the horizon. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. Duty comes first, she said softly. We do what we must to protect life. The legend of Sarah Lawson, the medic who had taken down 45 enemy fighters inside a single hospital, was now cemented. Soldiers would tell the story for years. Enemies would fear it. She had proven one undeniable truth: never underestimate the medic. The camera lingers on her standing at the entrance, silhouetted against the rising sun, weapon at her side, calm, composed, unstoppable, the ultimate protector.